and welcome everyone for this session. So in this webinar series, we are going to do 4 webinars, as you may know. In today's webinar, we are going to cover the overview for cloud native, how to build container images and container orchestration, which is Kubernetes specifically. And then in webinar 2, we'll talk about some of the tools with CI/CD like Jenkins X and Spinnaker. In the webinar 3, we'll talk about Service Mesh and how we can use it with the CI/CD pipeline. And in the last webinar, we'll do some of the tool sets which we can use for CI/CD in Kubernetes, which are listed there. Uh, so in this webinar, let's get started there. So what is cloud native? So if you look at the internet, you find multiple definitions about cloud native and what is it about. So I kind of try to look at all of them and try to abstract out some of the information and what we can define about cloud native. So one of the very basic things which comes about cloud native is how we can leverage the underlying infra with the software. So for example, if I want to deploy a VM instance on the cloud, I could just have a DigitalOcean API and call the DigitalOcean cloud to kind of provision the VM on the fly, which we'll see as a demo as well. How we can then efficiently package and distribute the applications, how we can manage the complexity with automations. For example, when you deploy an infra or an application, you would need infra as well as the application. So for both of them, you need some kind of an automations because when you go towards microservices, you have a number of services doing specific stuff, and you don't want to kind of run each microservice on there by hand, right? So you would automate first the infra part, like deploy Kubernetes, and then deploy the application on top of that. Then after that, overall, how we can have a DevOps culture in our organization or the work what we do. So with DevOps culture, we own the entire life cycle of the application from dev to deployment. So this is kind of overview of cloud native, what you would get if you kind of go towards cloud native. What are the benefits of being a cloud native? The first and foremost is you get a self-managed infrastructure. You could just kind of trigger a script which would deploy Kubernetes, destroy it. You get reduced cost because we could auto scale the environment on demand. So for example, today you're getting 10K requests for your front end for the application. Now, because of some advertisement or whatever, you get now 100K requests for the same application. So you don't need to kind of provision all of your containers or the VMs in advance. With cloud native, you could kind of scale the environment on the fly as the requirement comes up. You could quickly go to market. For example, to have an environment, this might take like in a manual way, like 4 day or whatever, right? But in automated way, you could kind of go to market in a day, basically in few minutes, and you are really up and running. You get the environment which is secure and auditable, so that you know what environment I have been running beforehand and what is the current state of the environment. So you can kind of make or differentiate what has changed the environment, what triggered some kind of issue, those kind of things. You can scale on demand, as I mentioned already. We get development and the operation parity. A developer can have the entire stack on its laptop itself. So for example, if you have a microservice-based application, you deploy Minikube or Docker for Mac on your Mac or Windows, whatever, right? And then you could build the entire stack on a laptop, and the same stack then goes to the QA and the operation. So there's a parity between the different teams, how we can deploy the application and then use it. We get efficient and happier teams at the end of that. So why we should go towards cloud native? I think one of the biggest benefit you get is your team becomes very efficient. They don't need to do manual tasks again and again because of the automation. It happens on its own. So while talking about cloud native, we now have a foundation called CNCF, which is Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is an open source software foundation whose parent is Linux Foundation. And they kind of make sure that the cloud native applications adoption increases among the different spectrum of the IT industry. And for doing that, they kind of hosted different projects like Kubernetes, Prometheus, Helm, and they kind of given those projects at home, where those projects can work together, such that all of the applications which you deploy with those tools, they are compatible and they work together. Okay, so CNCF provides a definition what is a cloud native system in general. So one is it should be a container packaged. So we should package our application in the container or container images, using which we can create containers as required. We should be able to dynamically manage the applications for which we could have like orchestration, like Kubernetes and other infra tools, which is built around the cloud native system. And then we should have a microservices based or microservices oriented architecture for our application, so that we could easily scale up, scale down the application. We can manage them independently. They can be language independent and so on. So this is what cloud native or the CNCF defines the cloud native system is. Here is on the screen, you see a cloud native landscape, which we have taken from the CNCF GitHub repository. And as you can see, there are different projects for different kind of needs. For example, you have tools for monitoring, orchestrations, containers. So this is the complete landscape, which is currently for the CNCF website, and which kind of gives you what are the tools you can use for different purpose here. Okay, let's go further. So let's just now kind of try to see how we could have a cloud native system in practice, correct? So there are 4 pillars which I kind of think of. One is the infrastructure, using which we build our backend infra. Then how we can package the application, and then how we would deploy those application into an orchestrated environment like Kubernetes, and how we can have automation around those things, such that we could have the CI/CD pipelines, automation of the infra, and so on. So now we'll kind of try to dig deep into each one of them. Let's go to the infra part. So the infrastructure on the cloud native does not mean you need to be on the cloud. It can be on-premise as well. It abstracts away the IaaS and the PaaS offerings, whatever you have. So basically, you could kind of say, you can write a program, and then behind the scene, it can talk to the underlying infrastructure and create the VM for you, create the container for you. It is controlled by the software, and we can manage them by the APIs. So let's just take an example of this. What do we mean by managing the infra via the APIs? So for this webinar, I think before we go for the example, I would like to highlight that we have a Git repository, which I'll put on the chat as well if you want to kind of follow along. So in this repository, we would be kind of putting down different content for the webinars. So here we have the content for the webinar 1. In this, we kind of have the labs which we're going to do on the webinar itself. So let's just talk about the infra part. For that, we are going to deploy Kubernetes using the Terraform on DigitalOcean. So what we have here is, of course, this repository is there. And let me just go to my terminal. And here I have cloned that repository. And as you can see, the structure looks same. I'll go to the webinar 1 folder. And then let's look at the Kubernetes section. In this, we have a Terraform folder, which let's go in there. So on this Terraform folder, we have scripts by which we are going to provision the Kubernetes cluster on DigitalOcean. For that, you can find the documentation in our Git repository and the prerequisite for that. I just want to highlight that to automate our creation of the VMs on DigitalOcean, we need to first get an API from DigitalOcean, which we could pass to our Terraform scripts. So on the DigitalOcean dashboard, you can have the APIs. And in the API, if you click on this one, generate a new token, you get a token, which we will take as an input for our script for Terraform. So which I have already got it, and I already performed the prerequisite, whatever is required. So let's just go to a terminal and then create or run the program called script.sh. And what it's going to do, it is going to talk to the DigitalOcean and create 2 VMs and or 3 VMs, and it's going to configure one Kubernetes master and 2 worker nodes. So it will take some time. So we'll go back to the slide and come back again, and we would see that this Terraform script would configure a 3 node Kubernetes cluster with 1 master and 2 worker nodes. So let's go back to our slide for the now. Okay, now let's talk about packaging. So in the packaging for the cloud native, in a cloud native system, we use container images. A container image is a self-contained entity which contains application code, its runtime, and dependencies. And with that particular image, we could create and run containers. On the screen, you can see we have an image with 3 layers: base layer, layer 1, layer 2. And what we could do with the help of images, we could add these layers as per the requirement. And here we have now the 3rd layer, which has been added on top of our base image. And now we can take this image and then we can start containers from it, right? For this image, we have a specification called image spec from the Open Container Initiative. So this image specification kind of dictates or kind of says that, okay, if you are building an image for the containers, you should follow this kind of standard, so that even if you use different kind of tools, you would be able to use those images using the different container runtimes and so on. So there are different tools which can be used for building these images, like Docker files, Google Canico, Builder from Project Atomic, and then we have OpenSUSE, OCI, and then we have a tool called IMG. So all of these tools can be used to build an image, using which we could create containers. Again, remember, image contains your application code, its runtime, and all the dependencies. So if you take the image and run it everywhere, it would run as it is. So we look at the example of some of these. Let's go back and check out the setup for the Kubernetes. It's still happening. That's fine. What I'll do is I'll open a second terminal for the same machine, and then we will try to perform the labs for the other stuff. But let's look at what Docker file in between. So a Docker file is as on the right side on the screen, you can see there is a file which contains some commands, some instructions. This is nothing but a text file which contains these commands, like here, the from, label, and the run. These are your commands, and like Ubuntu 16.04 is an argument for that, correct? So so we take this file, which we refer to the Docker file, and give it to a Docker daemon along with its context. So context contains the required files to build an image. In this case, we don't require any specific source code folder, because everything is within the base image and the other containers. But for example, if you have a source code, then you would pass along with the context, which can be copied to your image and so on. So this image is given to the Docker daemon, and Docker daemon would then build this image. So with Docker files, we can also have something called as multi-stage Docker file, in which a stage in which we build the image in stages, and the output of stage 1 can be given to the second stage, using which we can optimize the image and the overall image size, so that we get the better image for the production and to give to our customers and so on. So let's just go back and check out the example of this one. And it's good that, as you can see on the screen now, our Kubernetes setup has happened using the Terraform scripts. And this is what we call that infrastructure automation, right? We use a Terraform tool and the DigitalOcean key, and some bunch of Terraform script which kind of created this setup. And if I look at kubectl get nodes, you would find that there is three node setup. Our third node is still getting ready, so we'll just leave it like that for now. For now, let's look at the example for Docker file. So let me just go back a folder back, and I'll go to the container images folder. Then I'll go to Docker files, and here we can find a Docker file for what we have seen in the presentation. And as we can see that in this Docker file, we have a few instructions, like we'll use the base image of Ubuntu 16.04. We would then run a few commands to deploy Nginx on top of that, and then we make Nginx as a default program to run, so that when we run the container from this image, our Nginx starts, right? Okay, so let's just copy the command to build the image. So I'll go back to the webinar folder and then container images, Docker files, README. And here we can find how we can build an image. So the dot means this is the current context here in the local folder itself. So I'll just run this particular command, and as you can see, that image is now getting built. And eventually we would have an image with the name of ncurry/nginx, which we can use then to run the containers. Let's just wait for a few seconds to get over. I think it's over now. And if I do docker image ls, you would see we now have a new image with ncurry/nginx, and the tag is latest. So we just build this image using a Docker file. There's one other tool for building an image. Let's go forward and look at some other example for building images. The second one is Google Canico. This is a very interesting tool. So this tool can build an images from Docker file, but it does not use the Docker daemon. And we can run this we run this tool on Kubernetes directly, which takes the Docker file as an input and builds the image without the Docker daemon, and then pushes it directly to the container registry. So let's just take it in action, look at it in action. So let's just go back to our terminal, and let's go to the Canico folder there. And here you would find a file called pod-canico.yml. This file contains how we could build an image using the Canico directly on the Kubernetes, right? So I know that we haven't covered Kubernetes in detail or kind of look at all, but I assume that you have some basic understanding about Kubernetes to kind of look at the content and kind of understand here. So what we have here is we are creating a pod, and we kind of briefly look at the Kubernetes down the line as well in today's webinar. So we are creating a pod, and we are naming it Canico. And in this, if you look at, we are doing two things. One is we are having, in this pod, we are having two sections. One, if you look at on the line number 819, we have our init containers, right? In this, what we are trying to do is we have a Git repository, which we are cloning in /tmp rsvp app location. Let's look at this repository quickly. So here is the source code repository, which we are referring in that pod file. In that, we have a Docker file. This Docker file contains, again, the instructions using which we can build an image. So we are going to clone this repository into the /tmp rsvp folder, and then we are going to ask Canico using this image, which is on the line number 8, to build an image with the Docker file available in that folder. So let's just do that. And one more thing is the destination for this particular image would be on my Docker Hub. So what we are saying is, once the image is built, put this image into my Docker Hub repository with Encarre RSVP as the image name and with the Canico code, a Canico tag there, sorry. And because you want to push this image to my repository, somehow I need to pass what is my credential, right? So for that, we have mentioned the steps in the Git repository, which we are referring. Let me just go back to the right lab there. So here we need to first log in to the Docker account, and with that we'll have a file called in our home directory called config.json with that .docker folder. So as you could see that I have a file here which contains the credentials by which I can log into my Docker Hub, and I need to create a config map using those config.json file. So config map is a way in Kubernetes by which you can pass some configuration details to your pods, right? So this is what Canico requires to push this image to my Docker Hub account. So let's just create a config map for my Kubernetes cluster. And then now I could run this Canico pod here. So I would say kubectl or kubectl apply -f pod -canico.yaml. And what this is going to do is going to create a pod with the name Canico, and it's currently in the init state, which is kind of cloning the repository. So let's just do get pods and watch on this. So it's going to clone the repository and then trigger the build process for using the Docker file given that repository. And once the image is being built, it would push it to the Docker Hub. So it's still doing. Yes, pod is getting initialized now. It's running. Basically, image is getting built now. So let's look at the logs of the pod as well. Meanwhile, so I could say kubectl logs and the pod name there. And as you can see, it is kind of building my image. It is kind of installing those packages what were the part of the requirement.txt file there. Let's look at the log one more time. And now my image is now pushed to my Docker Hub repository. So as we have seen, without the Docker daemon itself, we could use Kubernetes to build an image and then push it to the Docker Hub repository or any other registry we might have. Let's go back to the slide and look at the third tool, which we could use it here. So the next tool is something called as Buildah, which is from Atomic Project. This tool can again use the Docker file to build images. It also runs user space. You don't require a Docker daemon to build an image. It can build an image in the OCI format and in traditional image format as well. And it supports the operations like typical list, build, push, RM, and those kind of options. So let's just see how we can use the tool Buildah to build an image in the user space. Again, let's go back to our repository there. And here the bunch of instructions by which you can install the Buildah machine on Ubuntu 16.04. But you can look at the documentation of Buildah to deploy on other distribution as well. So here we are saying that, okay, use the tool called Buildah, which we know, and with an option. Let me just copy this command right now on my terminal and then I'll tell you. So here we have the tool Buildah, and we are using the command called build using Docker file. So what we are saying is, Buildah, take this Docker file from the given source code repository and build an image with this image repository in the tag. So what we are saying is, with the Buildah tool, look at this GitHub repository where you would find a Docker file. Take this Docker file and build it. So just run the command here, and it's now performing the build step as given in the Docker file for in my that Git repository. which So build is now in progress. Let it happen. Let me go back to the repository again. So once we have the image which we would get from the builder, now what we can do here with the builder is we could push that image to the Docker registry itself. So we can use the builder push command and give the authentication file, and we can take this image which is being built by the builder tool and push it to my Docker repository or the Docker registry, right? Similarly, let's just do that. Hopefully that image is being built now. So I could say build images. So now I have an image which says that it's localhost NCurry RSVP builder, right? This is the kind of image what we have built now. Now using this command, we would push this image to our Docker registry. So our image is getting pushed to Docker registry. Right. So I just wait for a few seconds. Yeah, so image is now being pushed, and if I go to my Docker Hub account, I would see it there. Now, if you look at this image is currently with builder only, right? It is not being shown in my Docker in the Docker image ls output, right? So I don't have any image with the builder tag, right? Now what we could do is we could request builder to push this image to my local Docker daemon. So though I have used the builder tool to build an image, but I could push this image to my Docker daemon. So that has been done now. And if I look at now the Docker image ls, you would see we will have one more image with NCurry RSVP and as a repository and the builder as a tag. So these are the few tools which we could use to build the images. Let's now talk about orchestration. So in general, orchestration is a way by which we can run containers at scale. So with Docker daemon or with just the containerd, we could run the containers on a single machine. But when you want to have a production environment, we would kind of combine multiple nodes together and have a cluster. And on top of that, we'll deploy our containers at scale. So there are different tools are available for doing the container orchestration, like Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, Mesos Marathon, HashiCorp Nomad, and others, using which we could run containers at scale. So let's talk about Kubernetes in brief. So in Kubernetes, though we have seen the example earlier, but that's fine. Let's kind of review it right now. So in Kubernetes, we have master nodes, which can be in HA mode. So we have a master node. And then we have these worker nodes on which we run our user workload. On the master node, we have different components. The most important one here is the API server. So if you look at we as a user, we could communicate to the API server using the CLI API dashboard. So for example, we are running this command here. For example, if I have kubectl as a CLI, this is a CLI. So what we're talking about here is we as a user have the CLI called kubectl or kubectl. And if I do get pods, right? So this program called kubectl is talking to my API server. And then it is showing the output from that API server. The API server also talks to the scheduler in the master node. Scheduler job is to schedule the pods on different nodes what you have. With the controller component of the master node, we make sure that at any point of time, my current state is equal to desired state. For example, we have configured saying that, okay, at any point of time, I want to run 3 copies of my application. If one of the copy dies for some reason, the controller is the one who would notice that and create one more pod or one more replica for that application, so that my current count is equal to desired count. That's the job of the controller. On the master node, also we have a way by which you can communicate to the key value store, etcd or something else maybe. So this key value store, it can be either part of your cluster or it can be outside. So in production environment, mostly we set it to outside so that the cluster state is managed outside the cluster. So let me just make it full screen. So the API server communicates to the key value store where it stores the cluster state. So at any point of time, you can go to the key value store and say, give me the current state of the cluster, and you will get the exact state from that key value store. Let me just reiterate again. This key value store can be part of the cluster, can be outside, as long as API server can access. Now the API server also talks to the worker nodes via the kubelet. So on the worker node, we run different programs. For example, a kubelet, which is the main communication point between the API server and the node. Kubelet also manages the pods running in the node itself. So in Kubernetes, the deployment unit is called pod. So a pod is a collection or logical collection of one or more containers. For example, here you see there's a pod with 1 container, there's a pod with 2 containers, and then a pod with 3 containers. So a pod is a logical collection of one or more containers, using which we could run our application, on which we run our application. And there's a kube proxy, which again runs on each of your node. With kube proxy, we allow the external access to the application. So we are running an application on our environment. Using the kube proxy, that service is available to the external world. So that's there. So we talked about the pod. Let me just quickly go over to the next slide. I think that's fine. So we have a cluster already running. So if I do kubectl cluster-info, I would get, I am running a Kubernetes cluster at this, or the API server at this location, and we have our kubedns configured. That's fine. And we talked about the different nodes as well. So we can do kubectl get nodes, which we done earlier as well. So we have 1 master and 2 of the worker node. And if I do kubectl get component status or get CS, you would see that there are like components like scheduler, controller manager, and etcd. They are all healthy and they are perfectly fine. So this is okay. Now let me just go back to the Kubernetes folder there to do a deployment creation and service creation. So in this particular folder, we find 2 files, deployment.yaml and service.yaml, which we'll see. So deployment, we kind of create, we deploy the application. Like in this case, we are saying that we want to create a deployment with the name of nginx-deployment, which would have a replica set with 3 replica, and each of this replica would be having the pod of this template. So we would, if we run this deployment, we would have a deployment with the nginx-deployment name, which would have a replica set, and with the replica set, we would have 3 pods running using the nginx 1.7.9 image. So let's just go ahead and deploy it. So we could use the command as shown on the screen, which I'm doing right now. This creates a deployment, and if I look at get deployments or get deploy, I have a deployment. With respect to that, I would have a replica set, and then with respect to that, we would have 3 pods. So as you could see, with deployment, we have created a replica set in the pods. This is deployed our application. Now to access this application, we would have a service.yaml file. And let me just open the deployment file also in here. So in Kubernetes, we have a concept of label and selectors. So here we have a service which have a selector called app is equal to nginx. And if you pay attention, in our pod also we have the similar label. Here on the line number 15, we have a label called app is equal to nginx, and then we have a selector. So using the selector and the label mechanism, a service can connect to the backend pods. I know we are covering this thing in very fast mode. You could explore the other webinars by DigitalOcean from Janakiram. He has covered, or in the other webinars, you could find more information about the Kubernetes architecture, deployment service, and so on. That would be much more helpful for you to kind of look at the concepts about Kubernetes. Also, I have a course on edX for Kubernetes. You could check it out. It's a free course. You can just log in and then do it. The other thing in a service file, we see that we are kind of mentioning a type called node port. So this service would have a type called node port, using which we could access the application from any one of our node on the node port 30111. So let's just apply the service as well. kubectl apply service.yaml. So service got created, get svc, and we have a service running called nginx-service with the node port 30111. So now what I could do is I could get one of my nodes IP. So here are my nodes. I could pick up one of my nodes IP, go to the browser, and hit 30111. And we can see welcome to Nginx page is coming on the screen. So in this, we just kind of look briefly about what is the architecture of Kubernetes and how we can deploy an application on Kubernetes. In subsequent webinar, we would use more of these things to deploy the applications. But check out the other webinars from DigitalOcean to understand more about Kubernetes and that edX course if you would like. So that's fine. And let's go back to the slides again. Okay, so in Kubernetes, I mentioned that there are this API server, and this API server would have API endpoints. So if I kind of go back and run a command kubectl API-versions. So on the screen, now you see that there are different API endpoints on which we could send commands to. Right? For example, there is an API group called apps, which have v1, v1 beta 1, v1 beta 2 as an endpoint. And similarly, then there's a API group for authentication, batch, auto scaling, and so on. And if you look at this particular diagram on the screen, you could see them, right? So for example, this apps, what we have discussed, and in the apps, we would have this v1 endpoint, and there's a v1 beta 1. So for the given API group, you can have these different versions like v1, v1 beta 1, and so on. And inside those API groups, you have objects. Like for example, pod is an object here, which is under the category of /API/v1. And we refer /API as the core API group, while others are being referred as /APIs and the apps. So actually your apps group here is nothing but /APIs/apps, right? And then your /API is referred as a core API group. And if you look at the output, this v1 is referring that particular API endpoint there. And under that API endpoint, we have these objects like pods, nodes, services. So we already seen how we can create the pod, how we created the pod. And under the apps, we found the deployment. So if I kind of go back and show you the deployment.yaml file, you would see we are kind of connecting to apps/v1, which means when I run the command apply this particular deployment file, I would go to /API/apps/v1, and in that I would have an object of deployment which will get deployed. So Kubernetes says that we are going to keep these core API groups very minimal, but we could extend it. And that is what we are kind of mentioned about custom resources. So for example, you want to extend the Kubernetes functionality, but Kubernetes keeps this API groups very tightly coupled on its core. But I want to create some external objects using which I can perform some operation which I would like. And for that, Kubernetes gives you a functionality by which you can extend Kubernetes without modifying the underlying or the core Kubernetes code. So this is called custom resource. Like in this case, we are creating a custom resource called DigitalOcean.com. And we do it with the help of custom resource definition. So we have a CRD file in which we define which custom resource I want to have. And under that resource, we would have objects of that type. So let's just go and explore that one as well. So let me go to the respective lab there. Sorry. So here we have a file called crd.yaml, using which we could create a custom resource. So as you can see, the kind becomes the custom resource definition. And we're creating a group called DigitalOcean.com. So let's just do it and we'll kind of come back to it. And in this particular API group, we would have an objects which we could refer with the plurals called webinars, like pods, singular webinar, like pod, and so on. I'll just create this one and then I'll kind of come back to that. So let's just apply this file. So this would create a custom resource for us. And if I look at the API version output again, which we saw earlier, you would now see that you would get a new API group with the help of, with the name of DigitalOcean.com/v1. So with this particular kind, we created a new API group called DigitalOcean.com with /v1 as a version. And in that, we could have the objects with these names. So let me just tell you what I meant by that. So we now have the API group, and now we could create our objects with the file called webinar.yaml. And in this, what we are doing is we are going to refer our API group here, which is DigitalOcean.com/v1, which is the endpoint, kind webinar, which I mentioned there. And here we would give the webinar object name as webinar1, and we're specifying some information here like name and image, but we're not doing anything with that. So let's just create this one now. So as you can see, the object got created, and now I could do kubectl get webinars. As you can see, we have an object called webinar1. So currently we just created an object here, but this is not actually the extending of the working, something like that. So I mean, what I meant is we now just have an object. Now with that object, so there's a question in the chat right now, what is an object? So object is like a pod. So for example, if I do get pods, each of this pod is an object. So pod is an object, and a grouping of that is called resource. So there is a predefined APIs in Kubernetes where we say a pod is a resource, and under which whatever pods we have, they will become object for that, right? So now we created this object. It's an object. To actually have the functionality of extend the functionality, we need to write a controller, which we haven't seen right now. So with this particular CRD, we added a new API group, and in that API group, we could now create those objects of webinars. But to really extend the functionality, we need to have a controller which would listen to those object creation and perform the operation accordingly. So for example, if I create an object called webinar, it start dumping a YouTube webinar to a for example, YouTube webinar video file into a local repository, whatever it is. So you could write those kind of a controller which would perform the operations based on the object's creation or object deletion and so on. Let's move on to our next slide. So the last part here is an automation. So we have already seen a part of automation with the help of the infra automation, by which we could create the infra on the fly. Then we have this continuous integration, using which we could regularly merge the working copy of our code with the mainline code, so that there's no surprise towards the end. For example, there are 10 developers, they are working on 10 different features, and they work for a complete month, and towards the end of month they come one day and try to then merge all of that code base together and then deploy the application and so on. That's going to be a failure. If not, it's going to take a lot of time to kind of merge all the code. So instead of waiting for the entire month, what the CI says that, okay, you are going to merge those codes at a regular interval, like for example, every day or every week, and then deploy the application with the code what has been deployed or what is being developed in that interval. So that way there's no surprise towards the end. And the tools which we can use for the CI are like Jenkins, Travis, Concourse, and so on. So there's few benefits or the few best practices of what you could perform with CI. For example, you should maintain a source code repository. You should have an automation in process. So you could kind of say, like Jenkins, you can kind of keep a watch on that on the source code repository. If there's a change happens there, automatically a build get triggered, and you have the build ready for your source code, which you can deploy and test and so on. You could run test cases automatically and in the production like setup. You could automate the deployment as well with CIs. For example, you can say if all of my test cases have been passed, I would deploy my application into production and so on. And that's what the CD is, continuous deployment is, in which we could deploy the application production after it meets the predefined criteria. For example, passing the test cases and so on. So there are different tools available for the CD, like Jenkins, Spinnaker, and Argo, which we are going to explore later in this webinar series. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I want to cover for today's session.